Happy Thanksgiving, Detroit.
You are Locked On Tigers, your daily Detroit Tigers podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What is up, everybody? Welcome back to another edition of Locked On Tigers. I'm, of course, your host, Scott Bentley. Today is Thursday, November 28th, Thanksgiving 2024. Thank you so much for making Locked On Tigers your first listen. Every single day, we are free and available wherever you get your podcasts, including YouTube, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. You can start the season off with a big return on FanDuel. New customers can place just a $5 bet. Then you get started with $150 in bonus bets if you win your first $5 bet. Just visit FanDuel.com to get started. Welcome in, welcome all. Happy Thanksgiving to all of our Tiger fans in the States. I know we have some Tigers fans that are very faithful from our friends north of the border in Canada. We appreciate you all greatly for rooting for this frustrating, dumb, amazing, beautiful team with us. And I know your Thanksgiving was a little bit ago now. Today, here, we celebrate our Thanksgiving. Gonna have like a really corny, cheesy episode today. Nothing crazy, lighthearted. We're just gonna talk about what we are thankful for within the Tigers organization. Because I think that when you look at the state of the organization, I was going to say 5 years ago to now to really drive home the point, because it's drastically different over that time frame. But even just 2 years to now, even this time last year to now, the vibe, the perception, and the health, I think, of the organization is just dramatically different than it has been. And so we can just take this day, relax, not, talk about anything high stress with, like what trades are we going to make, what free agents are available, who's going to get, cut or re-signed, et cetera, et cetera. We can just talk about what we are thankful for in regards to the Detroit Tigers. We're going to start off with the American League Cy Young, unanimous, don't you forget it, Cy Young Award winner in Tarik Skubal. We're going to avoid talking about the will he or won't he re-sign part of this, because, again, we're going to keep this light and fun on this holiday. It is just so awesome to have a superstar on this team again, because there was a time in which the Tigers had multiple, right? The Detroit Tigers from 2010 to 14, 2011 to 14 had multiple MVP candidates, Cy Young candidates, perennial all-stars, superstar caliber players that transcended the old English D and were nationally regarded as some of the best players in the sport, right? We talked about Verlander on yesterday's show. Obviously, Miguel Cabrera. But even like Victor Martinez was runner-up for MVP in, 2014. Max Scherzer. David Price for a year. Yoenis Cespedes was a huge star. Tigers had him for a little bit. Justin Upton. Like, you can really just go down the list, man. And I think that finally, navigating through the thick and the deepest depths of the rebuild and getting out on the other side with, even if it is just him, having a building block of, one of the best players that puts on a jersey and cleats every day plays for your baseball team again. It's just a feeling that I forgot. And honestly, even throughout the year, I don't know if I ever said this on air, I had like trust issues with it. Like I'd be watching and be like, all right, well, he's going to implode now. Or like, okay. And that wasn't obviously his problem. That's my own brain and something that I'll deal with in therapy. But you know what I mean? Like that's how I felt. I was almost hesitant to accept the fact that one of the best pitchers, if not the best pitcher in baseball, laces them up for the Detroit Tigers every 5 days. Because that's not a feeling we've had in a very, very long time. And it's just nice to have that again. So shout out to Tarik Skubal. Next up, I'm very thankful for Superman, for Parker Meadows himself. I really went to bat, no pun intended, for Parker back in the preseason, back in spring training. And seeing him get off to the slow start really scared me a lot because there were concerns and we hadn't seen it over a large sample size. And I think when he was struggling, the thought was, oh my goodness, like now we need a center fielder, right? As much as I love Riley Greene, we'll talk about him later. He's not going to be the everyday center fielder for this team going forward. And even if Parker Meadows didn't turn out to be what he was in the second half of the season, he still wasn't. They were going to go find an everyday center fielder that was a legitimate center fielder. And nobody else on the team certainly comes anywhere close. So that would have been massive. That is such an important position. And in the lineup, right, having that speed threat is so important. And the Tigers haven't had that in a long time. They haven't had a legitimate, really good defensive, go get any ball in the air center fielder since Austin Jackson left. That was in 2014, was the David Price trade. So I think it's awesome to have that. It's awesome to have speed in the lineup, which we haven't been used to in a very long time, even when the Tigers were good outside of Austin Jackson and then a couple of months of Quentin Berry, right? Like they didn't really even have speed in the lineup back then either. So having that just dynamic of a player is so awesome to have again. And who knows what his ceiling is? Who knows what he's going to come back and do over a full season next year? But I am unbelievably thankful that, you know what, when I look at what I want the Tigers to add this offseason, the last thing, legitimately, I mean this with all seriousness, the last thing that I would want them to add this winter is a center fielder. You get another ace, there's 5 spots in a rotation. You get a second baseman, you can move stuff around. You get a corner outfielder, you got a DH spot. Shortstop, third base, catcher, I think everybody would welcome an upgrade at any of those. First base, certainly. You know the one thing no one wants the Tigers to add this year? It's a center fielder. It's the one position. And that's because Parker Meadows rocks. Let's get to a quick break here, because I think the next one I'm probably going to ramble for a few minutes on. I'm very thankful for AJ Hinch. We'll talk about that right after this. Got to talk Dill today about our friends over at FanDuel. Get ready to tackle the NFL action with FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook, because right now new customers can bet just $5 and get $150 in bonus bets if you win. The FanDuel Sportsbook app gives you everything you need to place live bets on all the NFL action in one place. So when you get a hunch in the middle of a game, you can check out the latest stats, view live play-by-play, and so much more on the same page where you place all of your bets. Just visit FanDuel.com to join today, and you'll get started with $150 in bonus bets if you win your first $5 bet. That's FanDuel.com. Never waste a hunch and make every moment more with FanDuel, an official sportsbook partner of the NFL. All right, everybody, welcome back here. Second segment of Locked On Tigers, segment 2. Appreciate y'all for tuning in as always, making us your first listen every single day. Shout out to the everydayers that do tune in every day. We will not be back tomorrow. I guess there's a slim chance that maybe I'm able to pull something out of my magic hat here, my bag of tricks, but that would mean recording on Thanksgiving, and I've done it before, but this Thanksgiving I will be up north with my father and his side of the family. Not going to have a lot of internet. Going to be a holiday, spending time with family anyway. So I would imagine that you will hear from me again on Monday, on December 2nd, after this, and we'll give everybody a little bit of a long weekend here. Like I said, maybe there's a Hail Mary's chance, but I would imagine I will not see you tomorrow, and I will be back on Monday. But today we are celebrating Thanksgiving and talking about everything we are thankful for within the Detroit Tigers organization. I left you with a teaser there before the ad break. AJ Hinch. You know, I said this, I can remember saying this on an episode in 2021, I think, where I had said toward the end of the season, because I took over about halfway through, whenever Matt Manning's debut was, about halfway through the 2021 season. And toward the end of that year, I had said a comment where I said, I don't know how the organization pulled it off, but they pretty much just like tripped and fell and found themselves with one of the best coaching staffs in baseball. Now, maybe that was a little dramatic. The offensive side of the coaching staff has seen turnover since then. They lost a couple of their base coaches because they were so good at their jobs to managerial jobs, right? Cruz, who's Trey Cruz, plays down in the minors and is a third or even fourth generation baseball family, like just baseball through and through. Got poached pretty early on in his Tigers tenure. Like there's a lot of those guys over the years, but I genuinely believe that this coaching staff has become. AJ Hinch has surrounded himself with one of the best coaching staffs. We'll talk about Federer, London, Nieves here in a second. But AJ, I think, proved in 2021 when the team took a huge step forward with very few additions and just him. And then again this past year, that if you even give him a sliver of talent, he is able to manage circles around most other managers. And I think that we all know about the cheating scandal, and we've talked about that. We talked about it when he was hired, and certainly that's something that is going to loom over him and that people are going to bring up for the rest of his career. But I think with every season that goes by, he proves that to justify him being a really good manager, he did not need that. And I think that's probably the most frustrating part of the Astros cheating scandal, is that they had an incredibly talented roster and a great coaching staff. Alex Cora, one of the assistants on that coaching staff, great GM. They didn't need to do it, and they still did. Anyway, AJ Hinch is phenomenal at his job. And I think that we now have a pretty large sample size of him being the manager of this team and reproving that every year. And I am very, very thankful that he is the manager of the Detroit Tigers. And I'm hoping, maybe I'm just a hopeless romantic, and I have like my like Disney brain on, but like how cool would it be for him to win a ring here? Win a ring with the Astros, get exiled from the sport, fired, suspended for a year. Nobody wanted you except the Detroit Tigers, who are terrible. They take you back, you work your way up, you stay the course, and you get back on top without cheating this time. That would be really cool. So I am just a huge fan of his, and I'm very thankful he is on my team. Speaking of the surrounding coaching staff, the pitching coaching staff that we hype up all the time, Chris Fetter, Robin Lund, and Juan Nieves just do such a phenomenal job. It's probably counted days until Robin Lund and or Juan Nieves find a head, like the pitching coach for a team, a head job somewhere else, I would imagine. I don't think they're going to keep the Robin Lund and Juan Nieves secret for too much longer. But as long as Chris Fetter is here, I'm going to have faith in this pitching development at the major league level. And I am so thankful that this team can actually hang its hat on something, right? Like back in the day, it was superstars. That is what they hung their hat on, and that's being a what's the word I'm thinking of? Not victim, but I don't know, a child of the Dombrowski era. If you're talking about me, right? Like that's just how Dombrowski runs his teams. But I think that this one, it's pretty clear that this owner is not the previous owner. It's not his father. And we're not going to go out and sign a bunch of $300 million contracts and get a bunch of big name superstar guys. So what are you going to hang your hat on? How are you going to be competitive in those restraints? And I think that the Tigers have found their tune. And that's going to be, they are going to turn pitcher. They are going to have a pitching factory. They're going to turn, talent that people either forgot about or don't believe in into good pitchers. Now, obviously that's not an 100% hit rate, but like if there was an 100% hit rate out there, everyone would do it. That's impossible. That's again, no one in the history of baseball can turn 100% hit rate would be like the equivalent of me walking into the Tigers clubhouse and then like Fetter and Lund look at me and go, oh, just throw the ball this way. And then I'm throwing 98 and getting Cy Young votes like that obviously it is on the pitchers ultimately, but the fact that we have such a good system in place is so reassuring. And that's because of those three guys. And it starts with the man on top rather than Chris Fetter. Speaking of development, let's kind of pivot to the front office here. I am very thankful for Ryan Garko, who is a name that isn't talked about in the mass media as much as Harris and Greenberg and the other usual faces we have. But Ryan Garko is vital to this operation. And he is the head of player development. So all of the credit, not all, I shouldn't say all. Certainly Harris and Greenberg deserve credit as well. But when you look at when this organization started getting a lot better at player development, and people try to go, oh, well, like, people were starting to develop before Avila left. And like, no, it's Scott Harris's, it's his doing. No, it's like Avila's picks and whatever. The real timeline is almost to a T when Garko got on board. And I think that he deserves, again, not all, that would not be fair to the other people who have done fantastic jobs, like our president of baseball operations. But Ryan Garko is a vital key to this engine. And gear to this engine. I don't know what I was going for there. He is a key to this whole operation. And it would not shock me if the Tigers have to keep bumping his pay up in order to not lose him to be a president of baseball operations or a GM somewhere in the coming years as well, because I think word is starting to spread that he is very good at that aspect of front office management. In a similar vein, Rob Metzler, I think, has done a fantastic job and is one of the key contributors to the Tigers organization when it comes to draft preparation. And I think this is another one where credit obviously goes to the president of baseball operations. He gets final say. He really goes after, especially the top end picks there. But when you start looking down the board at the draft classes the Tigers have had since Metzler came on board, you look at his history with the Rays, where he did a fantastic job there, with drafts in the past. Again, a lot of that kind of mindset of we're going to go after prep players, we're going to go after high ceiling players, and then Ryan Garko is going to help us develop these players. It really is a cohesive unit that I think has led to the Tigers farm system improving exponentially over the last several years. And I think that those gentlemen deserve a ton of credit. Back on the field, I'm very thankful for Tyler Holton. What a story Tyler Holton is and has really become. This guy was DFA'd put on waivers by the Diamondbacks to make room for Andrew Chafin, who the Tigers did not re-sign. The Tigers picked him up, and this year he received a 10th place MVP vote. Tyler Holton received an MVP vote. He finished 15th in MVP voting. For the rest of time, when you look at the 2024 MVP season, the 2024 season and the MVP voting and the rankings, it'll have Aaron Judge winning the award. And when you look down, finishing in 15th for the American League MVP is Tyler Holton for the rest of time. Multiple innings, lefty, continues to get better. He's an absolute dog, and I am so thankful that he is on this team for the foreseeable future. Putting a bow on the conversation we had before about the coaching staff and whatnot, I think one of the biggest kind of unsung heroes of this coaching staff is George Lombard, and I think he does not get nearly enough credit. I am convinced that this dude could have left and been a manager of a team about 5 different times since he became the bench coach of the Detroit Tigers. He is next in line behind AJ Hinch. He is AJ's left-hand man. And obviously Fetter has a very high standing in the organization, but that's strictly pitching. Lombard oversees everything like AJ does and is the second in command there on the bench and is a fantastic talent. His son is also pretty highly regarded prospect in baseball right now as well. I kind of wanted the Tigers to get him in his draft year a couple of years ago, but Lombard is a guy that I am convinced will be a manager one day if he wants to, and it is a huge part of this thing in this operation. I think he deserves a ton of credit as well. I think if it wasn't for AJ Hinch's rule of no coaches speak to the media, that Lombard would probably be a coach that is full of quotes and insight as well. Let's get back on the field and talk a little bit about Riley Greene. Then we'll zoom out and talk about some big picture stuff from this year that I'm thankful for as well. We'll do all of that right after this. All right, everybody, welcome back here. Third and final segment of Locked On Tigers. Appreciate y'all for tuning in as always. I'm thankful for Riley Greene. He's the man. And I think people jump to this conclusion that he is a finished product. And it's just like, oh, like this is what Riley Greene is and will always be. And that's not as good as I wanted him to be or something. He was the best non-Tarik Skubal player on the Detroit Tigers this year, pretty comfortably at that. Kerry Carpenter was the best hitter. Riley Greene was pretty easily the best all-around player that wasn't named Tarik Skubal on your Tigers. So he is really good. He was an all-star for a reason. He's a very good talent. There is still room for him to grow. He will continue to get better. He is still in his, early 20s? He's 23? He still has plenty of opportunity and room to grow, and I believe he will continue to get better. And similar to the conversation we had with Tarik Skubal, you got to win some internally. No team is completely bought. You got to win some from the inside and have some development. And even the really good teams are honestly mostly development. And Riley Greene is very quickly turning into a draft success by the Avila era, a development success by the organization, and is turning into a perennial all-star caliber player at the major league level, which is what we always thought he would be and wanted him to be. And seeing that come to fruition is really, really awesome. So I am thankful that, we'll see what happens this winter. We'll see what they surround this talent with. At a bare minimum, you got one of the best pitchers in the game, and you got an all-star caliber outfielder that you can stick in the middle of a lineup. Good building blocks to start off with. Let's keep adding to them. I am very thankful for the 2024 season. It was not that long ago that hope seemed to be all lost within the fan base and this organization. And I think just legitimately the second half of this year was some of the most fun I have had watching Detroit Tigers baseball in my adult life. It is probably the most fun I've had watching Tigers baseball in my adult life. And just the race, obviously postseason baseball is something we haven't experienced in a decade. It was really cool to experience that again, right? That goes without saying. But the chase is what I miss. I miss the race to the postseason. I miss standings watching and caring about the results of what other teams in the division do. And I miss the competitiveness of the regular season. It's a long regular season, right? I love doing this. This is my dream. This is my dream to just talk about ball with all of you every day. But it is an absolute grind to find 30 to 40 minutes to talk about every single day about a garbage baseball team. Every single night. And I will never complain about it. Because again, it's my favorite thing in the world. And Lord knows I can talk about anything for 30 minutes. But just finally having it be, this team is good. And these matter. These games actually matter to something. Was just a feeling that I don't think any of us have felt in a very long time. It was very nice to get that again. Speaking of the 2024 season and how it went, I am unbelievably thankful for Jason Benetti. to leave his dream job, which was play-by-play for the Chicago White Sox, where he was beloved by the fan base. I know did he get kicked out? Did ownership didn't like him? Whatever. Who cares? He ended up in our lap, and now a whole generation, right? Like I grew up on Mario and Rod, and the generation before me was George Kell, and pretty much like 50 years worth of generations were Ernie Harwell, and obviously Dan Dickerson, along with obviously Mario and Rod, all around the same time, that late 90s, early 2000s. And when I watch clips that have Mario and Rod on them, I get sentimental and I get emotional, and I like that is my childhood. The 2006 run to the World Series, the 4 straight division titles between 2011 and 2014, and Mario and Rod and Dan Dickerson. That is my childhood. I will take that to the grave. That will always be when I was just a little kid falling in love with the game. Those are the people that I fall in love with. And to me, because I am so overly emotional and sentimental, this team had the worst broadcast booth. And I'm not here to like point fingers or talk about names. It was a group, right? It was consistently voted and ranked as the worst booth in baseball year in and year out by publications. And to just have one of the best in the business, and honestly, the rest of the crew, Andy Dirks did a phenomenal job this year on the radio and the TV side of things. Dan Dickerson dipping his toe in TV, which he said he didn't want to do, right? The two of them dipping into the podcast game, which Dickerson said he didn't want to do, right? Natalie Kerwin, Johnny Kane, like Todd Jones, everybody on the FanDuel Sportsbook Network, side of things, and that Dan Petrie did such a phenomenal job. Like just the culmination, Bobby Scales, like it's so awesome to just have, this generation and the kids that are watching the Detroit Tigers now, in 20 years, they're going to hear Benetti's voice and they're going to think, man, that takes me back to when I fell in love with the game of baseball. And just having a voice to put to this hopefully new generation, a new era of Tigers baseball when they are back into relevance after a decade of being irrelevant. It just couldn't have come at a perfect time. The stars aligned. And that's beautiful, baby. Our beat writers, I am so thankful for. I get asked about, how I stay in touch with the organization, how I know all the intricacies and what's going on. Nobody tells me anything, man. I'm a nobody. I do not have an in within the organization. I do not have the Tigers, Lord knows, are not giving me a press pass. Like I am doing everything I do based on my own opinion and the information and fantastic reporting that is done by the beat writers for this team. And I promise you, they're some of the best in the entire sport and in all sports. You look around and you look at how other teams are reported on, you will quickly realize how blessed you are. I read the comments of my own stuff. I read the comments of our great beat writers' stuff. The grass isn't greener, man. Some people get really upset at some of the beat writers in this town, and I really don't get it. They are so great. Evan Petzold of The Freet, Cody Stavenhagen of The Athletic, Evan Woodbury of M Live, Chris McCoskey of the Detroit News, Jason Beck of MLB.com. All of them, did I say Cody Stavenhagen, The Athletic? I think I did. If I didn't, there you go. All of them do such a good job. And when people, some people just like have to get a shot in and they have to be like, oh, like I'm not watching your show because this show's better than you. It's great. I know I'm, maybe I'm quote unquote supposed to be competitive with like the shows that they have or the information they put out and whatnot. I know a lot of those guys. I've had beers with a lot of those guys. Like they're great people that I love dearly and I appreciate. And like I root for their success just like my own. And without them, I would not be informed. You would not be informed. We all would not be nearly as informed about this organization as we are. So it is all them. They deserve all the credit in the world for the information that we have at our disposal. And I always make sure to bring it up when I do talk about an article I saw from somebody or a talking point and who talked about it first. I always try my best to bring it up, but I really want to drive that point home. We are truly blessed with coverage and with media for this baseball team. I'm thankful for Kerry Carpenter. I'm thankful for the fact that he's the best hitter on this team. And I'm thankful for the moment he gave us of hitting a home run off Emmanuel Clase. You know, we've talked about the season as a whole and the big picture stuff and everything that went right. But if you want one moment of the season, if you want one specific moment of the 2024 season that I will never forget and I will hold dearly to my heart until I die, it is the Kerry Carpenter home run off Emmanuel Clase. That was impossible. And that was one of the coolest moments in baseball in the postseason. And it's one of the coolest Tigers moments of my life. Like legitimately. I'm not saying it's the coolest, right? Maglio that's tough to beat, man. All right. That's really tough to beat. And for those who are older, Kurt Gibson's home run in 84 is going to be tough to beat. Al Kaline in 68. Thrown out, who is that? Lou Brock at home plate. Tough to beat. 30-game winner in 68 as well. Lolich, tough to beat. But for me, man, and I think for anybody of any age, that is going to be the moment of the last 10 years of Tigers baseball. It's probably that one. And there's a lot of sentimental stuff like Miggy's last game and whatnot, but from a pure baseball perspective, that I think really kind of reminded people of how awesome Tigers baseball can be again. I'm thankful for pitching chaos because without you, we probably don't go dancing in October. So thank you to pitching chaos. I already said thank you to AJ Hinch earlier. He obviously a big part of that pitching chaos, but anybody who pitched for this team over the last 2 months of the season, they were a part of it too, man. And I take comfort in knowing that if the starting pitching gets depleted at any point going forward and the injury bug strikes, we have a manager and a staff that can go, buckle up, boys. We're going back to the well, and we know that this is going to work. And I'll end the show by thanking you all. I know that's like probably the most predictable and cheesy and corny thing you could possibly think of, but I'm going to do it anyway. I am every day I wake up and I am unbelievably grateful and thankful that I get to do this. And some days it's hard to know what to talk about, man. I'm not going to lie to you. Some days in the middle of January when all the offseason moves are done, but pitchers and catchers haven't reported, and you're sitting there and you're like, what on earth am I going to talk about today? And you all make that a lot easier for me. An anxious wreck that has been in therapy for 6 or 7 years now and seeing psychiatrists and psychologists and whatnot. You all make that a lot easier because I know that I'm just talking with a bunch of friends that love baseball as much as I do. And that's what I want this to be at its root. That's what I've always strived to make it at its core. It's not a place to go where you're going to see, and certainly I get passionate at times, but like I'm not trying to get red in the face mad every day and get a bunch of clippable stuff. I'm not coming on here and just, instigating arguments just to do it. I'm not trying to shoot hot takes from the hip just to get people to watch. I just want to talk ball. That's all I've ever wanted to do. I was a terrible student because I was writing about and making videos about the Detroit Tigers and the other teams in this city instead of my homework and instead of studying. That's real. That's why I was such a bad student. It's because I was doing this instead. And I'm forever thankful that I now have a platform where I am able to do it every day. And that is only because of all of you. So I promise you, I never take it for granted. I am so honored that anybody makes me a part of their day. If you're listening to this on Thanksgiving, heck, man, you deserve financial compensation. Like, you deserve a hug, right? Well, you're waking up, getting ready for family to come over, or you're going on a walk, or it's after the family's left and you're exhausted after a busy day, and you choose to come here. No matter where you fit this show in, if you do, I am unbelievably thankful for you. I'll say thank you again. You won't hear from me tomorrow. You get a day off from me, okay? And then we'll be back hitting the ground running like nothing ever happened on Monday, back talking about off-season ball, getting back into more of the nitty-gritty conversations. Winter meetings in December. And on Monday, it will be December. So some moves right around the corner, I'm sure. Thank you all yet again. Peace and love. Going to therapy's dope. I'll catch y'all Monday, baby. Go Tigers.